Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. In this video we'll be doing the chapter 4.1, that is section 4 chapter 1, that is history of novels. This is basically the very first chapter from your section novels or drama. There are 4 parts. First is history of novels, then you have To Serve With Love, then Around the World in 80 Days and the Sign of 4. The other 3, that is To Serve With Love, Around the World in 80 Days and The Sign of 4 are stories or actual parts of novels. History of novel is not a story, it's about novels. What novels are, when and where did they originate, what are the elements of a novel, how do you study it, or what are the kinds of novels, all of this. Okay, so it's like novels 101. You have everything, that basic things that you need to know about novels. So where do we start? It's the history of novels. Okay, so you start at the very beginning. When did the novels start? History means you basically, if you study history of some particular business, right? It's basically why did the business emerge. So similarly, now history of novels, when, why and where did the novels emerge? It started in the 18th century. So your chapter starts by saying 18th century gifted 2 things to literature. They were periodical essays and novels. The periodical essays didn't catch on as much as the novels, correct? The novels, they are still very famous, still in use. People still write and read novels. Periodical essays, you don't find them so much. But some people actually do write and read, and they quite enjoy periodical essays, right? So it's basically, you can think long writings on a particular topic. You might find that some people like to read blogs about particular topics, they sign up to some blog service or magazine service. It's about business magazine or fashion magazine. You can think of it as an extension of periodical essays. It's about one thing. It's very descriptive, but it's not as long as a novel, but it's quite long, not as small as your everyday essays that you write. Okay, so this is a chapter about novels. So we'll be further studying about novels. What is the origin of the word novel? It is derived from the Italian word novella, meaning new. So you might have heard telenovelas, the Spanish versions, right? So unlike telenovelas, which are series, you can say, novels are books. Okay, and it literally translates to new. Novel is more descriptive in terms of time, place, nature, people and their minds, their gestures and activities. So since kids, we have all been reading storybooks, right? You'll be introduced to a particular character or set of characters. You'll be told about a certain plot. Now they're small stories. They won't tell you everything in detail. On the other hand, novels are very descriptive and detailed. In the novel, you will find that each and every character is well described, the main characters. Otherwise, the side characters just, they are just introduced and they go ahead with it. The main characters are very well described. The time and placing is very well described. This character takes so much time in place A, then goes to place B, then there they do this. And the time also has a very important effect on your story. Then there is nature, people and their minds. So it's very important also to know about what's going on in a character's minds. Why? Because it shapes how your story goes, right? We'll read this in detail in elements of a novel. Now, precursors of a novel. Now, novel, it didn't emerge all of a sudden as novels. There was something before a novel which led to the development of this whole literary branch of novels. And what was that? The most notable and important one, top of the list, is the Greek romances, which were from 2nd to the 6th century. What are Greek romances? Now for anybody who even love mythology, you can say that's a glimpse of Greek romances. Like the name suggests, they're more about love, ideal love and adventurous things, where the hero sacrifices or fights the villain for the heroine, right? That's the Greek romances for us. They are fictional, they're about ideal love and they're about amazing adventures. Even if you read about Hercules, right? They are about adventures. They are fictional. Now, it's called mythofiction because it's related to mythology, but it's still called fiction, right? So, anything, even if you read anything about Greek history, right? More than Greek history, you can see the Greek mythofiction part. That can be called Greek romances. Now, earlier threads of literary prose. So what were the earlier parts of novel? Where exactly did we start with this novel, right? So earlier parts are seen in Virgil's Eclogues, Malory's Morte d'Arthur, and Geoffrey Chaucer's The Canterbury Tales. These are the three important ones, and these three names are usually taken together. There is another set of three writers from India. You'll have to remember those as well. These are kind of important. They might ask in objectives. This chapter mainly has objective questions. So देखो, these three names you have to remember. चाहे जो भी हो जाए, ये तीन नाम याद रखने हैं. कुछ चीजें इसमें याद नहीं रखनी है. I have just listed them, but आप उसे ignore कर सकते हो. But some things you have to remember, like these three names: Virgil's Eclogues, Malory's Morte d'Arthur, and Geoffrey Chaucer's The Canterbury Tales. There is another term that you have to remember: The Tale of Genji by Lady Murasaki Shikibu. And when was it written? It was written in 1010. Okay, it was written in 1010. ये भी important है. Match the following में भी पूछा गया है, and fill in the blanks में भी पूछा गया है. So you have to remember these things. So what do we have to remember up until now? Virgil's Eclogues, Malory's Morte d'Arthur, Geoffrey Chaucer's Canterbury Tales, and The Tale of Genji by Lady Murasaki Shikibu, written in 1010. So what were the first novels, right? So the world's first novel is Tale of Genji or Genji by Lady Murasaki Shikibu. Then you have the first European novel, okay? It's Don Quixote. Now the spelling is a bit, throwing off. It's by Spanish writers, so, the spelling and the pronunciation will be a bit different. It's not Quixote or Quixote, it's Quixote. It's by Miguel de Cervantes. They mostly just say this last part, Cervantes, and it was written in two parts between 1605 and 1615. What do you need to remember? The name and the writer's name. Okay, and it was the first European novel. That's it. You don't need to remember the other part, when it was written and in how many parts. Then you have the 18th century novels. So these are the main novels, okay? The main build up about novels happened in this time period. So why did the novels actually, flourish so much in the 18th century? So what happened in 18th century? If you are even slightly interested in history, you will know that there was Industrial Revolution in the 1700s. That is basically the 18th century, right? So when that happened, machines were made, right? And because machines were made, people had free time. लोग ना ऐसे आराम से बैठते थे. Also, these machines, they led to the formation of this new class that is not elite and not even too poor. The middle class, okay? And middle class, as we all know, सबसे बड़ा part of our world है, right? Elite, there are a handful of elites. Poor and extremely poor लोग बहुत कम है as compared to middle class, which is a very huge part, right? So now middle class people, they had some free time, and इस free time में they didn't prefer to read, the classic romances or the time pass वाली चीजें that were admired by your elites, यानी बहुत rich लोग. They read for entertainment, but middle class people, they are striving to become an elite, वो इतने करीब है रिच होने से, but they're not even completely elite, right? So what they wanted to do is, ये जो free time मिल रहा है, ये जो buffer time मिल रहा है ये लोग को, they wanted to utilize it to read something that's useful. तो middle class started reading more. They had less interest in romances. अभी कोई इंसान जो busy है and ज़्यादा अभी ना, it's a huge thing, okay? Self improvement. So whosoever is working towards self improvement, क्या वो ज़्यादा टाइम मोबाइल पे वेस्ट करेगा? क्या वो ऐसे एंटरटेनमेंट टाइम पास में ज़्यादा टाइम वेस्ट करेगा? या वो कुछ इन्फॉर्मेटिव चूज करेगा, राइट? दैट पर्सन विल रीड अबाउट देयर हेल्थ, they'll read about business, or they'll read something which is having to do with their field, right? तो similarly, the middle class, they were not so interested in romances. उनको कुछ काम नहीं आना था ये. They wanted to read things that were of social, political, cultural and scientific importance. So काम में भी help होता था. They got to know about what's going on around the world. So you can say in a way newspaper, right? Newspaper is every parents or every father's favorite in every Indian household, right? ऐसा क्यों? Newspaper में you get to know what's going on around the world and not like it's completely on a serious note, right? अभी newspaper ऐसा नहीं होता कि उसमें सिर्फ बहुत serious news होता है. Newspaper has everything, a balance, right? It has jokes also, it has informative stuff also, it also has upcoming कोई event हो. So it's giving you news as well as some relaxation, right? So that's what the middle class went for, and that's why in the 18th century novels became famous. नॉवेल्स में स्टोरीज भी होती थी, नॉवेल्स इंफॉर्मेटिव भी होते थे, एंड समवेयर और द अदर इट वाज लाइक हैविंग अ सोल्यूशन, राइट. अभी रेवोल्यूशनरी लोग क्या करते थे, नॉवेल्स में लिखते थे, एंड वो नॉवेल्स जब बाकी लोग पढ़ते थे तो वो समझते थे अच्छा दिस इज एन आइडिया दैट दिस पर्सन इज हैविंग एंड इट मेक्स सेंस, राइट. फ्रीडम के बारे में हो, चाहे यू नो बिजनेस के बारे में हो, एंड दैट हेल्प पीपल कनेक्ट एंड इम्प्रूव एट द सेम टाइम. So what was the new literature characterized by? Spirit of realism. Unlike the you can say the material that was encouraged by the elites, realism नहीं होता था उसमें. It was mere entertainment and all, you know, glitters and golds. But अभी क्या है, spirit of realism मतलब realistic stories होती थी and denial of romantic features. So it was not fictional or all feel good stuff. It was the truth, the reality. Increase in trade and commerce, industrial revolution, they happened after 1940 or during 1940s. Finally, novels encompassed social, political and cultural happenings and scientific progress. So that's why the middle class loved to read these novels, and that's how it became a lot more famous. So now, ye page and the next page, they basically have the list of your writers. Not all of them are important, some of them are, so I'll tell you which are important as we go by and what have been asked in the previous years, some of them, and so you can just focus on those. No need to remember every name, but even if you do, it's not a problem. You read this twice or thrice before going, or you know, at least like 5 times, so it will be a pretty easy thing for you. It will be a cakewalk for you. Okay, so first we start with John Bunyan and Aphra Behn. Now what we have done all this while is we have read, you know, Virgil, Malory, Geoffrey Chaucer, then we have read Lady Murasaki Shikibu, and then the Spanish writer Miguel de Cervantes. All of this we have read, it was the very start, beginning. Okay, so when novels began to develop as they are today, right, ekdam in a modern novel sense, these were the writers that played a very important part. John Bunyan and Aphra Behn. So Pilgrim's Progress and Orinoco, these are the 2 novels that they wrote. So I have written them in sets, as you can see, these two, and then these people. That's because that's the time periods. Okay, these people were at one time, after that they were followed by these people, which were followed by these people, and so on. So see, John Bunyan, Aphra Behn, then they were followed by Daniel Defoe and Jonathan Swift, who wrote Robinson Crusoe and Moll Flanders. Robinson Crusoe, very famous. Then you also have Gulliver's Travels. Every children's library has had Gulliver's Travels, and you have at least glanced upon it, right? So you know it's a storybook. So these are how it has started. Okay, so this is how novels took on. Then you have Samuel Richardson, Henry Fielding, Lawrence Sterne and Tobias Smollett. These are not so important, but just go through them. Okay, so you should know, okay, these group of people are after Daniel Defoe and Jonathan Swift. After that we have you know, children's favorites, Charles Dickens. Then you have Walter Scott, Nathaniel Hawthorne, Horace Walpole, Thomas Hardy, Wilkie Collins and H.G. Wells. Not so important, but you should just know they were after so and so people. Now in the 20th century, which writers characterized 20th century? It was these people. Okay, again, not very important names, not very frequently asked, but you should just go through these and have a rough idea about at least some of them. Okay, now we get to the immigrant authors. Questions have been asked about immigrant authors before. Okay, so Salman Rushdie, V.S. Naipaul and Kazuo Ishiguro. Salman Rushdie is from India, V.S. Naipaul is from Trinidad, and Kazuo Ishiguro is from Japan. These are immigrant authors, meaning they lived somewhere else. I mean, or they originate from somewhere else, and they have been writing in some other place, right? So these are immigrant authors. You have been asked about them in choose the odd one out. Okay, you'll be given 3 immigrant authors and 1 non-immigrant, or you'll be given 3 authors from one genre or from one time period or place and 1 immigrant author. That's how they have asked. Okay, then you have female authors. This was quite a big part in your book as well. Okay, so first you have Frances Burney, who wrote Evelina. Then you have Anne Radcliffe, who wrote Gothic novels. Then you have Mary Shelley, who wrote Frankenstein. Frankenstein is a very important novel because it's considered the very first novel relating to science and technology, and it's written by a woman. Okay, so first novel in science and technology, and that too first novel that is written by a female. Okay, so that's Frankenstein. We all know what Frankenstein is, right? The person is looking for a bride and he decides to make his bride out of dead body parts, right? He collects the body parts and makes himself a bride. So that's Frankenstein. Then you have Jane Austen. Then you have Emily and Charlotte Bronte, who wrote Wuthering Heights and Jane Eyre. Now, if you have had some decent reading experience, you know Jane Eyre very well. So these two are pretty important people. They call the Bronte sisters. Then you have Mary Ann, who was also known as George Eliot. So she had a pen name. What happened is women were not taken very seriously in some parts, right? So what Mary Ann decided to do, she didn't want to disclose that she's a woman. So she wrote under the pen name, or she wrote under the alias George Eliot. Okay, then we have Virginia Woolf. Virginia Woolf is an important writer. She is the author of one of our chapters, which is The New Dress. Now, as you might have seen, right, New Dress, it deals with the mind of our main character, right? Our protagonist, the lady, the girl, you don't have many elements that are outside of her. The entire story is written about how her chain of thoughts go, right? So Virginia Woolf, she is an important writer because she wrote a lot in that genre. She was specializing in that genre. She was very important for that kind of writing. Okay, so Virginia Woolf is important. You'll read her ahead as well when we study the different kinds of novels. Then you have Agatha Christie, the favorite of all the people who love, mystery, detectives. Anybody who's even read Sherlock Holmes knows Agatha Christie and loves her, probably, because as a reader, I personally think those books are masterpieces. Then we have Harper Lee, Margaret Atwood, Toni Morrison, and Alice Walker. These are your female writers. Some important, they can ask Agatha Christie, what did she write? She wrote crime, murder, mysteries, all of that. Virginia Woolf, she worked a lot on the chain of thought kind of thing, wherein the entire story or the entire novel or writing is written in, the main character's thinking. Okay, it's about how the person thinks. There is no outside element to it. Moving on, Frankenstein, important by a science fiction point of view. Then you have the Bronte sisters, who have been questioned about a couple times. The rest, not much asked, but these are the important things that you need to remember. Okay, so now we have come to the Indian scenario of novels and writing. Okay, Indian scenario, it started pretty late, but then it's a very important thing because one, you're an Indian, and two, the kind of genres, the kind of variety you find in Indian writing is also a very notable thing. So first of all, we start with the very first English novel written by an Indian. It was Rajmohan's Wife by Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay, and it was serialized in the Indian Field. Rajmohan's Wife, Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay, and serialized in Indian Field. This is a very important set of names that you need to remember. So first English novel written by an Indian, Rajmohan's Wife by Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay, serialized in Indian Field. I've repeated it so many times. I hope it's stuck in your mind. Just go through the line a couple more times, or remember this one piece of information. They can ask it to you in terms of match the following, or they can ask for fill in the blanks and such questions. Okay, then you have like I told you, the trio. You had Virgil, Malory, and Geoffrey Chaucer. Similarly, here you have a trio of Indian writers, Mulkraj Anand, R.K. Narayan, and Raja Rao. These three names are always taken together in terms of Indian literature. Mulkraj Anand, R.K. Narayan, and Raja Rao. R.K. Narayan, we all know, children's favorite again. He wrote Your Astrologer's Day. Then he also wrote a few of the very nice stories, right? Like A Horse and Two Goats, that was there for ICSC. Then a very famous and beloved show for many people, Malgudi Days, right? So R.K. Narayan, a very prolific writer. With that, we have Mulkraj Anand and Raja Rao. Then you have some more names, Anita Desai, Nayantara Sehgal, Arun Joshi, Manohar Malgaonkar. So these again, as you can see, I've grouped these names, right? So first you have the trio, then you have these names, that is Anita Desai, Nayantara Sehgal, Arun Joshi, and Manohar Malgaonkar. And then you have Amitabh Ghosh, Vikram Seth, and Upamanyu Chatterjee. Now these three people are also very prolific writers, gave us amazing stories. Okay, but they're not like so frequently asked in your questions, so not that important, but the first two parts that I said, right? The first novel and the Indian trio, very important. Then finally we have the modern people, the modern writers, Salman Rushdie, Arvind Adiga, Arundhati Roy, Kiran Desai and Kiran Nagarkar. These people, they are, you can say in a sense, the modern ambassadors of Indian literature or Indian novels, right? So Salman Rushdie is important. Then you have been asked about Arundhati Roy a couple times. Mostly remember this part and the first two parts, the first novel and the Indian trio. That should do the job for you. So now we are done with a certain part of novels. Not like novels is completely over. It's still there. You'll be studying some more important things about novels. But now we go on to a smaller branch of novels, which is novella. What is novella? You can say it's like the baby brother of novels. It's comparatively smaller, not so descriptive. The number of characters is quite limited. And then you can say it's in a very considerably small part, okay? Not like it goes on like your other novels. It's not about 300 pages long. It can be a bit smaller as well. So what are some prolific novellas that we have? Heart of Darkness, Turn of the Screw, Billy Budd, Death in Venice, Seize the Day and Pearl. Just go through these names, a bit important. Any of them can be asked. A couple have been asked in the previous years. So just go through these ones and it should be quite easy for you to remember. Just 6 novels and six writers. It should be very easy for you. Then we have elements of a novel or novella. Now comes the important part, okay? These part can come in writing short notes or match the following or just fill in the blanks as well. Okay, so let's go through every element one by one. First up, we have theme. You had been also asked a question that how many elements does a novel have? 5, 6, 7, 8. It's 6 elements, remember that? Okay, so now first we have theme. What is the theme? The theme is like the central idea of your novel, right? So if you consider the theme of your very first novel story that you have, To Serve With Love, what is the theme? The theme is the presentation, the half-yearly report day of the students of Green Slate High School, right? Then you have Around the World in 80 Days, how the person goes around the world and comes back, and the very, how it was challenging, but the person still managed to do it, right? And it was also that the person, he is not into earning that money. He's more about, he's given a word, so he wants to do that. So those are the themes. Then you have the sign of the four, right? So this girl, Mary Mostyn, she wants to look for her father. So the theme is looking for the lost father, and there is a treasure, right? So that's the central idea around which a whole story is built. Then the next part is plot. Now plot can be of two types, simple or complex. Simple plot is basically, you have a build up, a plot, and then a very ending part, right? The action goes down and it's very happy, nice conclusion. The complex plot is not just a plot. There's a build up, there's a small plot, there's some more build up, another small part, some relaxation, some more build up, another small part, and like this the plots are in a group. Okay, there are multiple plots that add up to one whole climax or plot of your story. Okay, so there is simple is a direct arc. Okay, there is increasing action, you have your plot, and then decreasing action. In complex, it's, you can say, a sinusoidal wave kind of thing. Increases, the plot takes place, there's some relaxation, increases again, plot takes place, some relaxation. Okay, now you have characters. Of course, any story without characters is incomplete, right? Now elements of novel, characters is very important. Why? Now come on, if you don't have a very prolific character, a very prominent character, the story won't be as interesting, right? Now characters can either be described in detail, okay, everything, how the character dresses, what the character is like, their nature, their preferences. You know that about your main characters, that is your protagonist and antagonist. Protagonist is a pro, meaning he is the good person, the hero. The antagonist, he is anti, right? So you can think of it like anti meaning opposite, so villain. Okay, so now you might know very in detail things about the main characters, but the side characters are not so important characters. You will not know much detail about it. They'll be introduced to you, and the required information according to the plot will be given to you, but it's not necessary that everything is told. So that's how you decide the character. Again, some novels, they work very nicely because of how the characters are built, right? Now if you take the two famous or very much liked by children novels, Harry Potter and Percy Jackson, for example, right? You're given a very descriptive detail about Harry Potter and Percy Jackson. You are given their history in a way, right? You have seen the character arc, you have seen everything, right? So if someone will ask you what would Percy Jackson do in such a situation, you will know if you have read the novel, of course. So you will know. Why? Because you're given such a good description of that character. So similarly, characters are very important elements of novel. Now, setting meaning where is that scene or novel taking place? What is the setting in the background? Why, what grounds is the whole climax taking place on, right? Why did all of that happen? Now if you just consider Shakespeare's Merchant of Venice, right? Why did all of it happen? There was hatred between Antonio and your Shylock. It was also a religious rivalry, and because Antonio had been not so kind, or you can say insulting towards Shylock, so Shylock wants revenge, right? That's your setting in simple words, but it's quite deep, right? So similarly, setting is very important to know why the story is taking place. Otherwise it won't make sense, right? Why this situation? It could have been something easier. Then you have conflict. Conflict meaning the struggle between opposite forces in the story is called conflict. Conflict in the story provides interest and curiosity about the plot. Of course, why are the hero and villain, why are they opposing each other, right? It's very important, because why are these people fighting? Doesn't make sense. You need to know the reason why. So you study World Wars 1 and 2, you study why is it happening, what is the reason, what are the grounds for those wars. Similarly, in a novel as well, it's very important to know what the two forces are opposing about. Then you have language or style, how the writer or author decides to write it. The author could make it very simple, very easy to read and understand, or the author could choose to have a very stylish, posh vocabulary, a rich vocabulary, thus giving it a very classy feel, right? So if you're writing the appreciation of the poem She Walks in Beauty, you have that the language is very rich, or the language is very, you can say the vocabulary is very in a sense you can say advanced vocabulary, which gives it a feel, which gives the woman a feeling of being very classy and elegant, at the same time mysterious, right? So that's why language or style is also very important. You cannot be writing a war story in a very unserious tone, right? That will just ruin the feel for somebody who's reading. And you can also not repeat the words a lot. So that's a lot about your style. How you write it, what words you use, what vocabulary you use is very important. We are done with the elements of novel, which were theme, plot, character, setting, conflict, and language or style. Now we are going to the last part, which is the types of novels. So what are the types of novels? You have 11 types of novels. First up, we have realistic novels. The name or the category speaks for itself. The novels are realistic. The novels are based on realism, right? It could be something that actually happened. It could also be a fictional piece that is written in a very real tone. So you could have fictional characters, a fictional name, fictional scenarios and situations, but it's right there. So suppose Mumbai में novel है, मुंबई की हर जगह सेम है, आपके पास सारी जगह है, आपके पास सारे जो बीच है, आपके पास गोरेगांव, मलाड, अंधेरी, कांदिवली सब है, बट उसमें कैरेक्टर्स अनरियल है, कोई इमेजिनरी पर्सन है, इमेजिनरी सिचुएशन है, इमेजिनरी फैमिली है. सो दैट्स रियलिस्टिक नॉवेल्स. Then you have picaresque novels. Picaresque novels comes from the word picaro, right? It's from the Spanish word picaro. What does picaro mean? Picaro means a rogue. Rogue मतलब देखो, now it's not कि ये एक villain के बारे में. Rogue means you can say in a way थोड़ा negative character, but you can't say कि ये villain के बारे में है. It's about the hero, but the hero turns villainish. Okay, the hero has some devilish characters. So you can say in a way, if you've seen Lucifer was innocent. Sorry, not Lucifer was innocent. That's not a really good book in my views. I'm talking about Lucifer, the series, right? The series Lucifer. In that you have the main character is Lucifer, people consider that he is not, he's not an angel, he's not godly, but in that particular story he is the hero, right? So if it was a novel, it would have been a picaresque novel. Then you have historical novel. Historical novel is about your history. You take Mahabharata, Ramayana, these can be considered as historical novels. People can say that they happened in the past. Or if you have Jodha Akbar, all of these are based on history, and they might have happened or might not have happened, but it has some relation to what is there in the historical records, what is there in your history. Then you have epistolary novels. What are epistolary novels? The word epistolary derives from the Latin word epistola, which means a letter. So it can be said that it's in terms of letters. So a series of letters is used to write the novel. So if any of you have read the book Daddy Longlegs, it's in a form of series of letters that this girl, Judy Abbott, writes to her sponsor, right? And her friend's uncle. So these are different. So this often she is writing letters to these two people. First to her sponsor to tell that person that, okay, you've sent me here to study, so I'm doing this. And to her friend's uncle, because they form a very nice bond throughout the book, right? So she is an orphan. She doesn't have many people to write to. So this one person that she bonds with, she wants to talk to the person, right? So she writes novels to him. That is epistolary novel. Then you have gothic novels. Now the term goth, it brings about, this goth teen thing had been very famous. So right, this person would be dressed in very dark clothing, black makeup, dark makeup, very heavy clothing. It's not, colorful. It's all black, gray, black and white tones. Similarly, gothic, gothic culture is said to be like, around ghosts and vampires, all these, kind of scary stuff, right? Similarly, gothic novels are about your scary stuff. It can be your horror, murder mystery, it has all these haunted buildings, ghosts, seances, all these kind of, spooky material, the spooky background to it. Then you have autobiographical novels. Autobiography, we all know what an autobiography is. A person writes about himself or herself, right? So in autobiography, the writer writes about themselves and they themselves write about it. So, I write an autobiographical novel, it will be like I am narrating the story. The narrator, instead of writing it like he did this, she did this, right? We'll write I did this, and when I was here, this person did this, right? So autobiographical novel, you write in the first person sense. Then you have allegorical novel. What is allegorical novel? It is a story that bears more than one level of meaning. So you can say in a very hidden sense the story is written. Suppose you don't want to reveal the real names, right? There are some shows, right, about crimes, murder mysteries. You don't want to reveal the family's name, the people's names, right? But you do want to get the story across. Either it could be to give them some lesson or tell them something, or warn people about something. So that's how allegorical novels are written. You change the name, you change the place, you change the setting, you change everything, and then the story is still the same, just the details are changed, which makes it difficult for you to identify the actual people who were there in the real life happenings. Then you have utopian or dystopian novels. These are novels that are set up in your, in an imaginary world. So for example, Avatar, then you have Harry Potter, for example, and Percy Jackson. These things, they might have some relation to reality, okay? The person and everything is there, but it's, imaginary community or society. In Harry Potter, people have magic. In Percy Jackson, they are descendants of Greek gods. They have powers. They're like they have ADHD and stuff, but they have good reflexes. They're good at fighting and stuff. Or in Avatar, for example, they turn into some different beings only, right? So this is your utopian or dystopian novels. You can consider it to be, a step above science fiction, because in science fiction it's about futurist things. These things are completely imaginary. Now you have psychological novels. What is psychological novels? Psychological novels is basically, it treats the internal life of the protagonist or even the other characters as much as the external factors. So you just don't work with what's happening, they wake up, they do this, because they do this happens. No, why they do this, what's going on in their mind, why they do something, why something, why they're compelled to do something, why they're tempted to something. This is all part of psychological novel. Now we have stream of consciousness novel. This is where we again are introduced to Virginia Woolf. So stream of consciousness deals with the mind of your protagonist, just the mind of your protagonist. There is no external happening, right? So in the new dress, right, what happens, this girl, this protagonist, we don't get much of an introduction of what's going on around her. We don't get to know party में कौन क्या कर रहा है, कौन कैसे enjoy कर रहा है. We just have कि ये लड़की पार्टी में गई, वो खुद इनसिक्योर है, लोग उससे आके कुछ कहते हैं, उसके माइंड में जो चल रहा है वो उससे अफेक्ट होता है. शी इज इनसिक्योर कि माई ड्रेस इज प्रॉब्ली नॉट गुड इनफ. समबडी सेज समथिंग इन अ वेरी पॉजिटिव सेंस, तब भी से लग रहा है अरे कोई मुझे टॉन्ट करके चला गया. शी गेट्स मोर इनसिक्योर. सो इट्स बेसिकली जस्ट व्हाट्स गोइंग ऑन इन हर माइंड. हमें ये बताया ही नहीं है कि आजू बाजू के लोगों के दिमाग में क्या चल रहा है और आजू बाजू के लोग क्या कर रहे हैं. कोई उधर अपना एंजॉय कर रहा है, कोई इस पर ध्यान ही नहीं दे रहा, कोई वहाँ पे खाना खा रहा है, कोई किसी और से बात कर रहा है. ये सब से कोई मतलब नहीं है. जस्ट मेन कैरेक्टर है, उसके दिमाग में क्या चल रहा है, उससे ही पूरी स्टोरी लिखी गई है. देन यू हैव बिल्डंग्स्ट्रोमन नॉवल. Now in stream of consciousness, Virginia Woolf specialized in this novel. Okay, the term was coined by William James in Principles of Psychology in 1890. So we have William James, who coined this term in 1890, and he did this in his treatise Principles of Psychology. So the flow of the person's thoughts is what your novel is about. Okay, and a very important writer in this kind of work is Virginia Woolf. Now we have the last Bildungsroman novel. What is it? It indicates growth. Okay, so you start with your protagonist is a kid, or your protagonist is going to go through a character arc. तो क्या होता है कि you are given this very small introduction कि एक बच्चा था, ये बड़ा हुआ, ये हुआ उसकी लाइफ में, तब he became this much abled of a person, उसने ये सीखा, इसमें famous हुआ. So there was this one series that I saw wherein the person is shown to be a very immature, not so successful person, and by the end of the story the person has gone through so much in his life that he is now, you can say, in a sense, a mafia leader. Okay, he is a very rich person. He controls, a very prominent society or group of people that is behind everything that's going on in the locality. He starts out as a very unsuccessful, childish, and you can say, not so concerned, carefree kind of person. By the end, he is very important, responsible, and so the character arc basically is what is important in the Bildungsroman novel. You start at a young age and you see growth of some kind, right? And finally, they talk a lot about science fiction. Okay, so there's this part about science fiction. Let's get there. Okay, in the first half of the 20th century, a cult of pulp magazines became popular, in which fantastic fictions for the general entertainment of the masses was printed on cheap pulp paper. Pulp fiction era provided a building ground for the detective novels and science fiction. So in this time, there was a lot of newspapers and magazines, and this led to growth or development of the science fiction, which included detectives, murder mysteries, solving mysteries. Okay, science fiction is a genre of speculative fiction dealing with imaginative concepts such as futuristic settings, futuristic science and technology, space travel, time travel, parallel universes, and extraterrestrial life. So aliens, time travel, you can think in all of the change, right? Interstellar, all of this. This is all science fiction. If you also see, in a sense, you can say, if you see your King Kong and all, right? These are all a sort of science fiction. Why? Because they're mutated in the labs in a certain way. There is some change made to their genetics, right? Not like science does that right now, but it's a thing. Science fiction hai wo. Science fiction often explores the potential consequences of scientific and other innovations. Frankenstein by Mary Shelley in 1823 is considered the first novel based on science and technology. The genre flourished in the second half of the 19th century. Second half of the 19th century meaning 1850s onwards, right? So it flourished a lot. And like I told you, Frankenstein by Mary Shelley is the very first novel considered to be written under science and technology. Then we have detective fiction is a subgenre of crime fiction and mystery fiction in which an investigator or detective, either professional or amateur, investigates a crime, often a murder. Some very famous examples: Sherlock Holmes, Nancy Drew, Agatha Christie books. Then we have A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, Good Girl, Bad Blood and all. So yeah, all of that. Moving on to brainstorming, we have, so first I'll just give you the answers, but if you have gone through this whole lecture very well, you'll be able to answer this. Murasaki Shikibu, we have Tale of Genji. Novella means new. Don Quixote, it was written by Cervantes. Then Raj Mohan's Wife, it was Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay, right? The very first Indian novel in English. Now, pick the odd element. Arun Joshi, Vikram Seth, Graham Greene, Kiran Nagarkar. If you haven't gone through the lecture also, you will tell this answer. Then you have place, period, theme, climate, lifestyle. Which one do you think it is? Comment down below. This is very easy. Then we have theme, plot, character, novella. Of course, novella, because the others are elements of a novel. Answer this one in the comments. I'll tell you if your answer is right. Now, complete. Two types of conflicts that a plot may have are simple and complex. The word picaresque originates from picaro, which means rogue. Now we have epistolary novels, presents the narrative through letters, right? Like I told you, Daddy Longlegs, right? This girl writes letters and that's how the story goes on. In the 18th century, middle class could get time for reading and discussing novels because the Industrial Revolution, invention of machinery. Next, short notes, you can look at it from the books and all. And yeah, we are done with the video. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, comment down below if you have any more queries or suggestions, or if you want videos on any other topics or anything. Thanks for watching.